Great, y'all. Well, I'm recording this for folks who had registered for today, but couldn't make it, and will watch later. Would love to just do brief introductions. Do you mind just kind of coming off mute, letting us know who you are, where you live, and what interests you about the Forest School Online? Maybe we start with Clay. Do you mind starting, Clay? I know I've seen you here before.
Hey, I'm Clay. I'm in Lehi, Utah, and I have a son who's Milo, who some of you might have just seen. And what interests me about the forest school is Milo's, not uh, uh, taking to his current school very well. He's a very self-directed and passionate learner on his own right. And he said, "Hey, I don't like going to the school because I'm not being challenged enough," which is a phrase I never expected to hear from a child. And so I'm doing some research for him. That's what brings me here. And full disclosure, I'm a former neighbor of Tyler's, so um, I don't need any help or assistance. But my sanity is just fine as a result. He's a very good man.
Thanks, Clay. It's good to see you here. Um, Melissa, do you mind sharing?
Sure. I'm Melissa. I live in Tucson, Arizona. I have two kids, junior in high school and a first year high schooler. My ninth grader, Tristan, similar maybe story, not so happy with his in-person school, although it has some wonderful elements to it. Tristan is a reader and a writer, and loves doing those things and loves learning Japanese and loves studying ancient Asian civilizations and is absolutely dreading having to take another year of American history next year, doesn't like the way that it's taught, um, the perspective it's taught from, really wants to jump into classes that are aligned with his interests and his perspectives. Um, and so I don't know. I mean, we're looking at different options. One, staying where he is, because there are some wonderful, really supportive teacher allies there. But then we're also looking at, the possibility of trying to accelerate high school and move on more quickly into college classes. And I actually had heard about the forest school sort of through the sibling of a friend. So I thought I should check it out.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Melissa. Rachel?
I'm Rachel Prakash, and I live in Jasper, Georgia. I was actually in Fayetteville last month, so it was one of those when I saw where you were located, I was like, oh, it's kind of a small world.
It is a small world. Amazing.
Um, but I have four children. I've homeschooled them all the way up. My daughter has graduated. She's 17. And then I have a son who's going to continue going to the school we're at now. It's a homeschool co-op. But for my younger two, they've changed the curriculum quite a bit, and it's become very narrow and very forced, and to the point where my kids don't like education anymore. They don't like learning. And for me, my whole goal as a parent and a teacher is to instill a passion for learning. Because if the kid has that, to me, it feels like they can do anything they want at any point in their lives because they'll have the tools to be able to embrace, their whole purpose in life. So I'm looking at different options too. And when I was kind of reading about this, it got me a little more excited to be, educating my kids again because it's more in line with what I feel learning should be for children.
Great. Thanks for sharing. Great to have you on the call, Rachel. Um, Michelle?
Hi, I actually came across the Forest School because we're in New York City and we're moving to Atlanta, probably before the school year is over. Um, I have three kids, 21, 16, and soon to be 14. Um, my 14-year-old has never really took to school. She's most often bored or the social aspect just isn't her thing. We've homeschooled all three. I homeschooled all three of them at some point in time, and we both agreed that, especially for my youngest, going back to homeschool isn't the best thing that we want to do. So I actually was looking into forest school in person, but I came across the online, and I said, well, let me just get some more information. So we're just gathering information now and see where it leads us.
Great.
Mhm.
And Yarmeen, I know audio is a little choppy. Feel free to share your introduction in the chat if that makes sense. But Yarmeen, it's great to have you. Anything you want to say?
I'll check. You guys can hear me. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I think chat is
No,
best.
maybe
Kind of,
not.
it's choppy. So we'd love to hear, we'd love to read about where you're coming from. Thank you. Um, well, this is my family. This is actually my wedding last weekend in Charleston, South Carolina. So my wife is named Summer, and she's a nurse. And then my four children, River is my daughter. She's 19. My son Oz is 17, and then Linus is 13, and Irving is 11. And all four of my kids actually attended the Forest School online in its inception. Um, and we live in South Atlanta. I'm just noticing Yarmeen put in the chat to me. She says, "Hi, I'm Yarmeen, mom to a seventh grader in New York City. Heard about the Forest School through a former virtual school director." And she just said, "Wow, congrats. Thank you. Appreciate it." Yarmeen, great to have you on the call as well. Um, so I mentioned briefly my role at our organization. I'm the CEO of our organization. I also teach at the University of Pennsylvania and at Harvard, and I teach these courses sort of in new school models, education leadership and innovation, deep learning, and AI, project-based learning, those sorts of things. And a lot of what I teach, in those settings, I also train our staff in. So, for example, today I train our staff in some project-based learning techniques that we talk about quite a bit in my classes. And for a time, before Forest, I worked for a national nonprofit in education redesign called Transcend, which is in the bottom left of the screen. And the only reason I add this slide is because in that experience, I was a founding partner there for 5 years, and had a chance to help design and start and lead a number of public and private schools around the United States and abroad, and just got a chance to see a lot of different models. And so in many ways, the Forest School and the Forest School Online are a culmination of my own experience and learning. I have a lot of skin in the game with kids at the schools. And I've seen a lot of things. And because I'm a little bit later on in life, I lack the patience for boring, irrelevant learning. That is, trying to make a child force into a certain model of school, where I believe now, especially in an age of AI and an information age, we can really design school to fit the child. So very excited about what we're doing here. This is our broader team that Christy and I are representing here on the call. A number of these folks work at the Forest School Online. Most of them work at the Forest School in person, and some work at our institute or are on our board. And it's a really great team, and with a lot of different backgrounds and experience. And I just want to share a little bit about an overview of our school approach. And I'll invite Chrissy back to get into some of the details as well. And if at any point you have a question, please feel free to stop me or drop a little note in the chat. And I'm happy to kind of riff with you to explain more. But my goal is to share about what our school's about, why we do, what we do, and so that you can, make an informed decision. And also, one of the themes I'm hearing in all of you is you're exploring schools. And I totally get that as a parent. And I'd love to just offer up my own expertise as a thought partner to you and an ally. I'm a person of faith, and I believe, whoever's going to come to school is going to come to the school, and so I don't feel stressed about that. And if I can help you make that decision, by providing perspective, please, see me as a resource. But we really are trying to redesign school at the Forest School Online. When you think about other industries over the last 100 years and how they've evolved, thanks to research and development, thanks to innovation, medicine is just a great example. Obviously, the world of communication enabling us to be able to do this, and the world of work. I mean, the majority of our parents now work, remotely or in some hybrid situation. There's just been tremendous evolution and innovation. But when you look at schools, 100 years ago, and again, this can be the United States, but also outside the United States, 50 years ago, and even now, I mean, our neighboring schools, not far from where we all live, there's a lot of similarity. There's not been a lot of innovation and change. And I actually asked my teenage daughter this question a few years ago: how many features of school can you find that are consistent across the time periods? And her response was, sort of a teenage angsty, response. And the jury is not out. The jury's back on a teacher-centric industrial age model of schooling. The longer kids are in that model, the more bored they become, and the less relevant they feel school is to them. And so for us, to see the leap in motivation and outcomes that we believe kids deserve, we feel that we must engineer a new design of learning for 2025 and beyond. So the Forest School Online is really, it's not trying to take a nearby model and improve it just a little bit. It's really whole model transformation. It's designed to do something different with kids. And the metaphor I use is, it's not the difference between, Mercury, Venus, and Earth. It's the difference between the Milky Way galaxy and a galaxy far, far away, because it feels so, so different. As I mentioned, we have 3 parts of our organization, and we have a shared mission about purpose finding and calling. Just to give you a sense of who we are by the numbers, we have 162 learners in person, and that's ages 3 to 18. We call them heroes because we believe every learner is on a hero's journey. So students who come to our school, we don't call them students, we call them learners or heroes. And we help them think through their hero's journey. Who's going to be their mentor? What challenges they're going to overcome? What ahas are they going to have? And how are they going to be changed as a person and pursue their calling? We have 45 learners at the Forest School Online across 3 different studios, and we'll get into the numbers in just a little bit. Over 50% of learners at our school are on scholarships, so we have flexible tuition. We have 18 full-time staff and 10, a little bit more than 10 part-time staff. We have 6 of those are associated with the Forest School Online. We ask our parents on a scale of 1 to 5, how pleased are you with the learning experience? And parents rate us at 4.85 out of 5 stars on average every month. And then learners are a little bit harder on us. They rate us a 4.8 out of 5 stars, but we care deeply about parent feedback and integrating that in to make things better. We have done a capital campaign to raise money to be in a building. And so our headquarters is in South Atlanta. And the reason that's pertinent to the Forest School Online is we invite families from the Forest School Online to our campus 2 times a year, the beginning of the year and the end of the year, and especially for our commencement ceremony and for graduation. So we'll graduate students in person. And it's not, the Forest School Online visitors it's not required. We also provide an online graduation ceremony. We did that last year for one of our learners in Uganda. But we have also graduated multiple learners from the Forest School Online in person in South Atlanta. And it's a really interesting place that we live, y'all. It's south of Atlanta. It's in Trillith is the name of the neighborhood. It's next to the biggest movie studios in the world. So think Black Panther, Endgame, Infinity Wars, World War Z, Superman, Spider-Man, all these interesting movies. And it's also the future home of the headquarters of U.S. Soccer, and they've just broken ground about 5 minutes from us. So it's a really fascinating place to be. There's a lot of energy there, and we have a great emphasis on um, communications and media as a school. As a result, we have a great emphasis on storytelling. In fact, our English language arts program is framed as story. And so we invite learners into stories to consider them and discuss them and talk about them. And then we invite learners, of course, to make their own stories. And they can be, of course, stories of any kind. It could be a short film. It could be an essay. It could be an op-ed. It could be a mood board. It could be a pitch for a real estate agent. There's storytelling is so relevant across industries, just for life. So, a few key features of our school is we have Socratic guides instead of teachers. So our staff do some direct instruction, but they primarily pose questions, and they instead guide learners to learn the various subjects, and as well as their passion projects and independent projects. They guide them in Socratic ways. So they'll respond back to learners with questions and to help them think more deeply. And so our learners use a lot of e-learning platforms. They learn a lot from their peers, and they learn a lot from research, and they learn a lot from trial and error. And what my staff is expert at is knowing what deep learning looks and feels like, and to guide learners along that journey. But we want to keep learners at the center of their learning. Clay used the word self-directed at the beginning of the call. That's a term we use quite a bit here. We are trying to grow interdependent self-directed learners by the time they're 18, that they've truly learned how to learn for themselves. And there's a lot of terms in the education field for that: self-directed, learner-led, learner-driven, learner-centered, self-determined are all examples. These are our brothers and sisters. We really believe in giving young people the reins of their learning, holding them accountable, inspiring them, supporting them, and celebrating the wins that they have. So we have mixed aged studios. So our youngest studio is basically grades 5 through 8. And then and that's a US based studio primarily. And then we have a high school that's grades 9 through 12, all together. And then we have an Asia Oceania studio that's grades 6 through 11. So it's middle school and high school. And that's on the Asia Oceania, on an Asia Oceania time zone, a transatlantic time zone. And we find that the learning across the ages is powerful. We do not have grades, and instead we are mastery based. So learners have to prove that they know and are able to do things through assessments. And when they affirm that they've learned something, they get a badge. Badges are worth a lot at the Forest School Online. You want to get a badge, and you need a badge to advance studios, to advance and to graduate ultimately from the school. And the cool thing is you can create your own badge. So some of you have already mentioned, a learner wants to pursue stock trading, for example, or a learner wants to pursue Portuguese, or they want to pursue soccer. These are examples of badges that learners at the Forest School and the Forest School Online have created in the past. And what we do is we guide learners to create that independent study, for lack of a better term. And once that plan or that program gets to a place where we feel confident that if they go on that course, go on that journey, it's going to be deep learning, then we will authorize it. We'll say go, and then we will bring that, endeavor into our check-ins with the learners, and we will ask them, how's it going? And once they finish it, then we will give them a badge, and so every learner who graduates from our school and who attends our school for years, they make their own badges. They create their own, they create their own learning plan. It's kind of like going to a buffet and looking at all the options at a food buffet, and maybe there's some things in there you like, but there's a lot of stuff you don't like. Well, the good news is you have access to the kitchen. You can go in there and you can actually make whatever you want to eat. It's similar to Forest School Online. If a learner has an interest in something, we can help them flesh that out and create a plan for deep learning, for them. And that's part of our expertise and value add. Number 4 says we have contracts, not rules. So the learners at the Forest School Online are the ones who make the rules and the norms for their studio. And they're getting practice at making rules worth following, which is a valuable skill. There's no homework, of course, unless a learner chooses to do that. The learning is the projects, which happen primarily in the afternoons, are hands-on, a lot of group work, and they are interactive project-based learning. And there's e-learning as well. So learners typically in the mornings are working on reading, writing, math, and online platforms that are responsive, adaptive, AI-driven, and gamified. And we will guide them through those. It's self-paced. So someone was mentioning, not holding, a couple of you actually mentioned not wanting to hold your learners back. We have the same philosophy. We don't want to get in a learner's way. We want them to go as fast or as slow as they want. And we're going to stay agnostic to that, how fast or slow they want. We want to make sure the parent and caregiver and learner are on the same page with the speed. And then we're going to get behind that, and we're going to guide you in that way. We have a number of learners who have taken their time, and gone slow. One of my four is one who's chosen to do that, Linus. And then we have a number of learners who have said, you know what, I want to go. And they go fast. In fact, we have a few learners who finished high school in 3 years, and have been with us for just 3 years, and they finished all their badge requirements. So it's self-paced. Travel obviously is encouraged. The Forest School Online, people are traveling all over the place. You can take your learning with you. Apprenticeships begin in middle school. And one of the things we do, y'all, is we guide learners to, first of all, reflect. This is middle and high school learners. Reflect on 10 possible apprenticeships that they would want to do with a real high-performing professional in a field. And then once they reflect on 10 possibilities, narrow it down to 3 based on, what their interests are or their calling or what they want to learn or be exposed to. And then we guide them to write an email to those individuals that it would be hard for people like me and you to say no to, a really well-written email. And the email is requesting a phone call. And so they get on a phone with those 3 people and they pitch themselves as an apprentice. So the reason I'm describing this is because we as a staff, we're not getting these apprenticeships for them. We're guiding the learners to get them for themselves. And they do. And so they'll pitch themselves to these 3 people on the phone. And then they'll get either 3 yeses. And then if they get 3 yeses or 2 yeses, then they have a choice to make. If they get 1 yes, well, then that's going to be their apprenticeship for that year. And if they get no yeses, then they have to start over. And, which is very real world. And they go back to the drawing board. And every middle schooler every year does 1 40-hour apprenticeship. Every high schooler does 4 apprenticeships per year. And so if you're with us middle and high, you will have done over 21 apprenticeships, from start to finish. And by the time they graduate from us, our experiences, they're like, oh yeah, I know how to get an apprenticeship. And they have a good sense, especially what they don't want to do. Almost everybody thinks they know what they want to do until they do an apprenticeship, and they're like, oh, that's not what I was thinking it was. And they'll change their mind. And for us, that's a massive win. And then of course, some learners, find out exactly what they want to do, which is great. But I don't know about you and your school experience. I didn't have anything like this growing up in the rural South. So we love the apprenticeships. Number 11, our school is diverse by design. In many ways, like I said, the Forest School Online is one of the most internationally diverse schools I've been a part of, and it's an international student body. Y'all, this is our portrait of a graduate. When we started the school years ago, the parents and I got together and asked the question, when our kids are 18, what do we want them to know and be able to do? And this was our answer. So learning to be our social and emotional factors, like purpose, resourcefulness, growth mindset, gratitude. Learning to do are key marketplace skills that we felt were very relevant for learners as they graduate high school today. Design thinking, storytelling, creativity, entrepreneurship. You can't graduate from the Forest School Online unless you understand passive income. You can't graduate from the Forest School Online unless you understand, how to create a minimum viable product, sales and marketing plans. Learning to learn is obviously, you'll see there the traditional academics, right? Math, English, civilization, and science, but also learning science. We want learners to understand the latest and greatest in brain research about how brain science works and what it suggests for learning so that they know how to teach themselves. And then lastly, learning to live together, especially in a diverse environment. We feel that's so important for 2025. And we intentionally want to bring together families from across lines of difference to help them love and support one another. And so you'll notice some of the skills there: empathy, collaboration, social capital. Just a word about that last one on the bottom right, social capital. I've been doing this work a long time, and the biggest game changer, in my opinion, for a learner's long-term trajectory is the strength, quality, and quantity of the relationships that they have. Specifically, three kinds of relationships: relationships with people who are similar to them, people who may be the same, race or religion or worldview or economic background, people who are specifically different than them in some important way, different race, different worldview, different background, um, different economic status. And then lastly, people who are leaders, people who are influential, people in positions of power who can help them get a job or make a recommendation or give some advice. Basically, the research in education suggests that if a learner has those three kinds of relationships in a healthy way, they're called bonding, bridging, and linking social capital. And social capital basically means the practical help that emerges from trusting relationships. If a learner has those, it's the greatest, it's the greatest determiner of success, academically, that a learner can have. And so we care about that a lot at the Forest School Online. And we help learners think through who they know, in each one of those three categories, and who they could potentially build relationships with in those three categories. And in fact, you cannot graduate from the Forest School Online until you prove that you have strong, deep relationships, in those three categories. Again, that's just one example, but it gives you a sense of the sort of intentionality behind our learning design. Let me pause there for a moment before I get into some of these signature learning experiences. Any comments or questions so far?
I think for me, this is more attractive in person. Like I know this is the online session, but I'm just really like I could see where they could fit. Um, my question is either online or in person. Is there any type of musical theater aspect to First School?
Great question, Michelle. So as a learner-led school, we follow the learner's lead. And so there would be, Michelle, if two things happen. Anytime a learner gets an idea for something, we come back at them and say, absolutely, you need to have two things. Number one, you need to recruit and have a critical mass of other learners that want to do this as well. That's number one. And then number two, you need to find a parent volunteer. And we actually did start a musical theater in January of 2020. And then a few months later, a worldwide pandemic rained down upon us all, and that program shut down. And when we went back to school and posed the question to our learners, is this something you're still interested in? They had moved on, and we are responsive to that, and will be. And so Chrissy can talk about some of the clubs that exist at the Forest School Online, and they are all learner driven. They're all learner led. Whether it's robotics, whether it's aerospace, whether it's tumbling, whether it's a workout club that they do virtually. At the in-person school, we started volleyball and basketball, and we actually have learners at the Forest School Online who play with us. It's all learner led. So that's our approach. It's a great question.
Okay, I have another quick question.
Sure.
So I know you said that the online school, they can come in person to graduate. And you just mentioned that the online school plays with the kids. So is that in person? Like they come in person and play with them?
Yes,
Okay, great. Thank you.
you bet. Let me just share a few other details. Oh, go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what experience you have with autistic kiddos. level 1 autism, but, who have really different ways of socially relating, and might have, challenges in group settings. So that's one of my questions. And then the second question I have is, with a small number of faculty, although your ratio is also great in terms of faculty to students in the online school, what if you have a kiddo who really wants to learn something that's in an area that your faculty really knows nothing about? How do you support that?
Great question, Melissa. So for the autism question, I think this is important and relevant to everybody on this call, actually, because as a diverse by design environment, we appreciate the fact that folks learn in different ways. And so I'm special ed certified in the state of Georgia. And our process for any learner who has any kind of learning differences, either coming in with, existing evaluations or, potentially needing to have evaluations moving forward, it's the same. We will take a look at a psych evaluation or an IEP, individualized education plan up front, and take a look specifically at the accommodations. So we have a number of autistic learners, in our environments, and we will create for parents and for the learner a document that has 3 categories. It says the first one is things guides will do. The second one is things guides will not do, based on our either capacity or mission. And then the last one says things that we recommend parents and caregivers do at home. And then we sort of come back to the family and say, hey, take a look at this. How does this sound? And then, we'll go back and forth and we'll make a few tweaks. And then once we all agree, really the learner, the family, and our team, then that becomes our sort of living document for a support for that learner. And there's, about 25% of learners at the Forest School Online and the Forest School in person, fall in that category of having a support document in that. I mean, we do have some level 1 autism kids at the school. And then the second question is, Melissa, you have asked the question, I think, that is the question of for educators in an information age. We by no means are trying to staff our school to have the level of expertise and content knowledge that kids need. In fact, I think if my personal, and my bias is going to come out here, Melissa, but my personal take is if we tried to do that, we would be not serving our school and our learners well, because really now with the internet, with AI, content is no longer an issue. World-class content is no longer an issue. Where we are expert is guiding deep learning, knowing what deep learning looks like. We also have connectivity to content level experts that can verify things. We also know what world-class third-party verification of knowledge and skills looks like, that we can bring in, to assess. So I'll give you an example. So we have a learner who took Romanian, and passed 3 years of Romanian, in over the course of a few weeks. We have another learner who took Japanese. Basically, I brought in, we know the process of learning a world language. We know what sorts of mastery-based, milestones are required to demonstrate mastery. And then we brought in these experts and said, how do they compare against these standards, and that's how so if we don't have the expertise and we need that expertise, we'll bring it in. But if we take the mindset of like, we're passing on our knowledge to these learners, we're going to hold them back. So we want to guide the quality of learning through multiple channels. And what I train my staff in is doing that, and in knowing what, deep learning looks and feels like, and then having the network to bring in those folks. Great questions. Just a few more things I'll share before I invite Chrissy back to get into some details. On the screen here, number 8 says deep books. Every learner at the Forest School Online gets to choose what they want to read. They have to make a pitch, though, of why this book is, a potentially life-changing book and awesome for them to read. and then it's authorized by our guides, and then they read it and they write a report on it and share it back, whether or not, and they share their opinion about whether or not it was worth it. And that's a part of our English program. The very first point, Socratic launches, those happen twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. And they are a discussion, kind of like I had with you at the beginning, where you pose a few questions, you tell a story, you pose a few questions that have no clear right or wrong answer, and then you invite debate. And so learners are discussing it, and it's normally stuff that they're interested in and would be willing to talk about, and they're invited to take on different perspectives. And in the afternoons at each one of our schools, they're doing either civilization, where they're making sense of world history and current events. They're doing story arts, where they're telling or reading or watching or listening to stories, and they're making their own. And then lastly, Quest. It's project-based learning. It's interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, project-based learning, where they're using their math, science, social studies, and English to solve a real-world problem. In terms of why families choose Forest in general, number one would be racial empowerment. We have a number of Black and brown families who have told me that the reason they've chosen a self-directed school is to empower their students to grow their own agency and to take charge of their own learning in ways that a teacher-centric model doesn't. We have a number of families who choose the Forest School for freedom and flexibility, because you can sort of learn, from anywhere, and you can, study anything, and you can go at your own pace, and, there's no homework. We have a number of families who choose it for flourishing. And by that, I mean, you can make your own badges, so you can study anything you want. And again, we help you think through the trade-offs of that, but, you can get a high school diploma at the Forest School Online and it'd be completely customized, to your learner. Number four, career prep. If in fact, in 2025 and beyond, we live in a gig economy that requires self-leadership, what better way to practice that than to get practice from the earliest stages? So we have a lot of families who come for that reason. And then affordability. We have flexible tuition. And the cost of the Forest School Online has opened up independent schools, to a lot of families who otherwise wouldn't consider it. And then also there's a number of emerging education savings accounts in some states. I know somebody's in Tucson here. There's opportunities there to take advantage to apply to the Forest School Online. In terms of common struggles, though, it ain't, because nothing's perfect, and the Forest School Online ain't perfect. Here's what our parents struggle with, and I'm just going to name it. One would be letting go and letting learners fail and learn from the natural consequences of their choices. Number two would be self-pacing. Like, what if they fall behind? Some parents get anxious about that. We don't, as a staff, because we really believe in kids experiencing the natural consequences of their choices and experiencing those in a low-stakes, caring environment, and then learning from those, and then shouldering the responsibility for their own learning. We have a lot of different lingo, as you've heard me use on this call, and it just takes a while to understand at the Forest School Online, so that's a challenge. Learner self-governance, because they make the rules and they guide, and have town halls and stuff. That can be messy because they're still learning how to lead and co-lead together. Number five is parent agendas. If parents have a pretty set vision of where they want their kid to be at the age of 18, whether that's college or career, probably are going to struggle with us, because we're always asking. We're never going to get in between a parent and their learner, by the way. And we're always going to ask learners, what's inside of you that's not yet in the world? What are you being called to? What do you need to be doing? And I've just experienced some parents who are not comfortable with those questions for their kids because they want them to go to college or they want them to do whatever. And again, college is great. We have college acceptances in some of the nation's most elite universities and colleges. And we know how to help shepherd that. But we're open to other multiple possibilities. And then tracking progress is very hard. I am currently raising money to try and solve this problem. But right now, learners at the Forest School Online and learners at a lot of different schools, some of you may have this challenge, they're on 3 or 4 different learning platforms that are made by different companies. They're also doing 4 or 5 different things with us. And there's no dashboard that collects all that information into one place that just shows a little report, a report card of it. And there's reasons, there's a lot of barriers, and it's a real hairy problem, but we're working on that. But we're a few years out, so it's a struggle. I'm going to go ahead and invite Chrissy back, but would love to just ask y'all, what do you like, wish, or wonder? What questions, do you have?
I may have missed this because my learner was having difficulty with the quiz that they gave them because we kept asking for a different prompt. But how do you all, with it being self-directed and they kind of get to choose what it is that they're researching and learning about and developing projects based on that? Is there anything aligned to standards? I know you said that there have been students that have been accepted into some of the more prestigious colleges and universities. So what does that look like if you're saying like kind of the tracking process is a little bit cumbersome in
Yeah,
terms
great
of.
question. So we use a mastery-based transcript. Have you ever heard of that, Ivy?
I have not actually.
So it's an emerging, exciting thing. Colleges have accepted it, are accepting it. We were the first in the United States to submit it. There's hundreds of schools that submit it now. But it's basically like a LinkedIn profile for kids, and it demonstrates the skills, knowledge, and competencies that they have mastered over the course of their high school career. And then it shows some of their best work. And we, with our high schoolers, as they come into high school, we have a conversation with them. We say, when you're 18 years old, where do you see yourself? Is it college? Is it a 2-year college? Is it a job? Is it starting your own business, starting your own nonprofit? Is it military? Is it a gap year? Is it starting, a start level entry job, or is it a beyond entry level job? And then based on their answers, we will backtrack and customize a plan for them that positions them for success. And then twice a year, we'll ask them, like, how's that plan changed? And we'll have this parent meeting with learners. And as it changes and pivots, we'll customize the plan, to be able to do that. And of course, they're taking some of the traditional courses online, as well as our quests and Civ and Story Arts and all the things, apprenticeships. And by the time our learners apply to colleges, they have incredibly impressive applications to colleges, because they've done real world projects that project-based learning that are interdisciplinary. They have done incredible apprenticeships. They've written unbelievable things. They're excellent communicators, because we have 7 exhibitions every year where they get to practice and speak, publicly. And so, yeah, our learners have gotten into, Howard, West Point, Georgia Tech, the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, somebody got into last week, University of Vermont last week, some of our nation's biggest like state schools, like Auburn University, as well as, elite private institutions.
Okay. So quick question, it's a two for actually. One, if the child has no clue what they want to do, ha ha ha. Um, and how does that kind of guiding process that you can't kind of back into what the end goal is? And secondly, we had been looking at a semester school program for him, like his sophomore year. How does that work if they want to take a semester at a semester school program?
Great. I'll take the second one, and Christy, you want to take the first one? So the second question about, can a learner do something outside of the four-school line and get credit for it at the four-school online? And the answer is yes. And that happens all the time. In fact, we credential out of school, quote unquote, out of school learning all the time. And examples are what you just described, or dual enrollment courses. Learners in a number of states can take dual enrollment courses for free. Another example would be like a pilot's license. We have 3 learners, one at the four-school online, who've gotten their pilot's license, and that counts as school. And what we do is we put on our registrar's hat, and we look at the experience, Ivy, that they've taken, and said, okay, what does that equate to, right? In a middle school degree or a high school degree. And then we see, well, what did the learning, was it deep learning? Did they prove mastery? And if the answer to all those things are yes, then we authorize it. And what's incumbent upon us as school leaders is that colleges are trusting us. They're trusting Chrissy and I are making good, wise decisions. And, they'll know once we send learners to them whether or not they've actually mastered those things or not. So we have a rigorous process, where we judge that. And if they don't quite master it, it's not the end of the world. We simply say, you're not done yet. Go back and learn some more, and then come back to us. So that's how we answer the second question. But Chrissy, for the first one, like, what do we do with learners who don't know what they want to do? They don't have an idea of their purpose. And this is most learners, Ivy.
Good to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, this is we have a lot of learners. Obviously in middle school, it changes by the time they get to high school a lot of times. We have a couple learners who it stayed consistent up into high school, but a lot of times it changes and morphs as they grow and they learn different things. But we also have high schoolers who join us in all of the years in high school, and they're still trying to figure it out. So a lot of what we do is purpose finding and just trying on different hats. So I know Tyler mentioned apprenticeships. So we encourage the learners to do a variety of different types of internships in different industries, so that they can get a feel for like what type of career is going to be fulfilling for them and is going to feel purposeful and meaningful and not just, hey, I want to make money. So they're getting to try out jobs that way. Through our signature learning experiences like Quest and Story Arts, they're also getting exposure to a wide variety of different skills and topics. We've done things like photography. We've done our sciences where they get to be a forensic scientist or a skincare expert. So they're getting to do these real world challenges throughout the whole year and kind of get a feel for, hey, what's it like to do work in this kind of job? We have experts come into the studios who work in those fields that we're learning about and talk to them about what it's like to work in that kind of field. They give feedback to the learners on their projects that they're making. So it's a lot of exploration. And then just one-on-one check-ins with the guides and them just kind of talking through like, hey, what is the kind of life you see yourself having in 10 or 15 years? What do you value? And they just kind of have those types of discussions together. And then lastly, I'll say this real quick, is we've currently been using a platform called UScience. We have another one we're looking at for next year that's similar, but it's these little series of brain tasks that the learners take, and it gives them a massive profile of what their strengths are, areas for growth, and then it connects those to jobs and college majors that really sync up with what the learners are great at and what they would excel in. And so they're able to explore those different careers and different college majors through that platform, which is really cool.
Thank you for that. From age 5 to like 12 and a half, he was like, I'm gonna make films. And then it just stopped and turned into I don't know. And I was like, okay, well, we're gonna start the show over. So glad we're not alone in that.
Not at all.
Over the course of a learner's day at Forest Online, they have a lot of room for flexibility in terms of how they enjoy their time and what they do. There's a few synchronous moments throughout the day, which you can see, pictured here on the screen, where they'll come together with their studio for a studio discussion. There are other moments where they'll meet with their running partner, which is basically a teammate with whom they set goals and share their goals, listen to the other person's goals, and give and receive one another feedback and hold one another accountable, give them encouragement. And then, as Chrissy mentioned, regularly, each learner has a one-on-one check-in with their guide, where they get a chance to talk about how's your work going, how's your badge plan going, how much progress have you made, what challenges have you run into, how are you overcoming those challenges, how could you overcome those challenges, how are your relationships, and how are you doing, how are you feeling about how things are. We take a holistic approach. Chrissy, do you mind just briefly sharing Kiki's and Marcos's story?
Sure. So these are two of our current learners. Kiki lives in Kenya, and she's in our middle school studio, actually our Asia middle school studio. And Kiki came to us with a really strong interest and passion for fashion, but also really just design in general. And so Kiki was a learner who came to us kind of knowing what she loves, but feeling a little bit lost with school and just kind of going through the motions. So what our guides have really focused with Kiki is helping her to connect her badge plan to what she's passionate about, so that the work that she's doing every day feels authentic to who she is, feels meaningful to her, and like it has a purpose. It's not just busy work. So some ways that we've helped her to do this is for her deep books, learners get to choose what books they read and pitch them to the guides. And So she's read some books on the history of fashion. One year she read one on how to start your own fashion line, and I think it was geared towards teens, which was pretty cool. Her apprenticeship was actually to mentor with a pretty high profile fashion designer in Nairobi, which is the capital there in Kenya where she lives. Her elective that she has done most years in middle school so far has been a sewing class that she goes to once a week. She even entered a national competition where she created a dress with African material and actually got to model it on the runway. It was gorgeous. I wanted it. And then even for some of the quests and story arts that we plan and have a topic picked for, she's been able to kind of personalize those. So we've done things like a podcast where she could make her podcast be about fashion and her talking about what it's like to work in fashion as a teen in her country. So there's opportunities even within the stuff we plan as guides for learners to bring their passion and themselves into it.
I just want to say, Chrissy, before you talk about Marcos, at this point, the learners, if it's getting close to bedtime, you guys can go to bed, and I hope that you guys get a great night's rest if it's time for you to go to bed. And thank you guys so much for being with us. Do y'all have any questions before you go? It's okay if you don't. It's okay if you do. Okay. Well, here we go. Chris, you want to share about Marcos, and then we'll wrap up with our final questions.
Awesome. So yeah, Marcos is one of our high school seniors. He lives in the US and is in our US time zone high school studio. And Marcos is passionate about aviation. He's one of the learners that Tyler mentioned that is working on his pilot's license. Also interested in some components of aeronautics as well. So again, Marcos has used a lot of his badge plan to really tailor it to the college program that he wants to do. He's not sure exactly, but something in the sciences, probably air or space sciences, that he's applying to colleges for. So again, some of his deep books have been things like different books about the history of aviation. He's read some memoirs of distinguished pilots over his time, some books just for fun. And for his apprenticeship, one of his apprenticeships has been to actually clock the hours with a flight instructor to earn his pilot's license and learn about being a pilot. And then he's done some advanced science classes in his science field that he's interested in through dual enrollment. So one of those has been Intro to Aviation Sciences. Another one he did was physics through Embry-Riddle dual enrollment. And so he's really trying to make his mastery transcript stand out so that when he applies for things related to science or aviation, that the admissions department is saying like, okay, this learner has really invested in this area, and they're serious about it.
Awesome. Great examples. Thank you, Chrissy. Any final questions as we wrap up here? Love to address any enduring wonderings.
We have another question. How do you, let's just say a student is doing something, they're interested in it, and then they suddenly change their mind, and then they find something else, they're interested, they change their mind, they quit. And I have a rule in my house that you have to try something at least a year to know if you like it or not. So that's, I don't know, like, what do you guys do to kind of make sure that they're just not, going from one thing to the next and not really focus in on one thing long enough?
Yeah, the answer is the badge plan. That's the structure that we create a badge plan at the beginning of the year. We provide it to you as family. You take a look at it. You sort of say, hey, is this right? Is this customized to my learner? Do we want to add, subtract, or change anything? Chrissy or I or a guide help families think through trade-offs, if they subtract something or add something or tweak something. But we're completely open to that. For us, the important thing is that the learner and the family is on the same page. Sorry, I lost the internet for a sec. The important thing for us is that the family and learner are on the same page. And, we help you think through trade-offs. We do have a few graduation requirements, for example, statistics. That's something that's required at our school. We think that's the new top of the pyramid of mathematics in an information age. But there's a ton of flexibility. And so we really anchor our guiding in the decision, Michelle, of the parents and the learner. So if you told us, you and your learner, like, hey, this is the goal for this year, we're going to honor that. We're going to bring that into our check-ins. We're going to bring that into the badge plan. That's kind of how we approach that. Chrissy, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think it's just a series of ongoing conversations with the learner and the parents. We have two kind of checkpoints, mid-year and end of year, where learners reflect too on their badge plans and what they've accomplished, and they're able to adjust or make new goals for the next year. And that's with their parents and their dream team, which is like their support system. So that can be the time where, the hard questions are asked by the family or family friends or relatives, like, hey, I noticed you moved from this to this. Like, what's the reason? They really get to reflect on that, and that kind of helps make sure that things stay in check and that they're staying on the right path for them.
Thank you.
So, on the self kind of guided stuff, like how do you arrange the particular curriculum? Like, say they're doing a geometry class. Do you have already resources in place for that? Or is it something where the learner gets to kind of choose how they access that information?
Great question. I'll start, and then Chrissy, you add, subtract, or change from what I say here. But geometry is a great example. The vast majority of our learners for geometry use Khan Academy. Are you familiar with Khan, Rachel? Yep. So they'll use Khan, but we are completely open to if a learner has a different illustrative math, prodigy, other geometry sources, Harvard, a massive online course from Harvard. If they have another, even a dual enrollment course in geometry, or another course from a university like ASU, or Southern New Hampshire, that the parent and the learner find is really compelling and fits with their learning style more, yeah, we're completely open to that. What we'll do is we'll take a look at it, verify that it's legit deep learning, and say go. Chrissy, would you add, subtract, or change anything from that?
Yeah, I would say online, the majority of our learners for math are either on Khan or another platform called Brilliant, which is a little bit different style than Khan. So some people love one, hate the other. And then, yeah, we've in the past also had learners who need pen and paper and do a textbook, and we just alter the way we check in on math with them doing that.
Okay, yeah, didn't mean for it to be specifically related to math. Like right now, my kids do a math program out of Exeter College in England, and it's actually been a free curriculum, and it's amazing. But
Awesome.
I was just wondering if they just choose one of the general badges, and then it sounds like for math you've got your ideas in place, but like for anatomy and physiology and those kind of things, you have already kind of ideas of how to steer the learner to their resources, or is it something that you work with the learner to kind of obtain the resources that they're most interested in?
Go ahead, Chrissy.
Yeah, I would say it's both. And that's when at the beginning of the year, we talk to the parents and the learner in a badge plan orientation. We say like, hey, what are you already doing? Or what have you been working on? Are there any courses that you want to take this year on different platforms? So if a family comes to us and they don't really have anything they're currently using, we have a list of resources that we can provide and recommend and say like, hey, check these out, and let us know what works for you. But if a family comes to us and they're already taking different courses, whether it's science or history or math or English, whatever it might be. Yeah, we find ways to work that into their badge plans so they're receiving credit for those.
And Rachel, it comes from different sources. Sometimes the learner, and or their parents or caregivers will bring that learning opportunity to us and pitch it, and we'll verify it. Or sometimes we will bring it to the learner, or sometimes we'll crowdsource it among our parents. Say, hey, has anybody seen a great, program for this? And there'll be an idea that comes up. And then sometimes we will guide the learner to create it for themselves. And then we have a checklist. It's called Design Your Own Course. And we guide them to create their own independent study for that thing. So like for anatomy, for example, we've had learners create their own anatomy course. And we've run it through our process to make sure that it's deep learning, and then we've authorized it, and it includes world-class examples, reflection activities. It includes an interdisciplinary project that's going to help somebody else where they're actually using their learning. It's going to include, prompts and essays, and it's going to include watching great videos and reading great articles that are, verified as like legit and seminal. And that's another way. And so it's really all of those. And the spirit of it though is a couple things. One, that it's genuinely personalized to the learner, and two, that it's legitimized by the school as being deep learning.
Okay, I think Michelle had a question too, and then I've got another one.
Great. And then I saw Melissa's hand raised as well. Michelle, you want to go first, and then Melissa, and then Rachel again?
Sorry, I see. I was asking what are the school year dates? And I see Christy said August to the end of May, sometimes a few days in June. And so there's 7 sessions. Am I reading that correctly? 1 week off between. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can you explain what 7 sessions? I'm sorry if I missed that.
Yep. So we have 7 sessions for each. Great question. We have 7 sessions that last 4 to 7 weeks each, and there's a week break in between each one. So shorter summers are a little bit shorter, but there's more and longer breaks throughout the year, and we find that helps in 2 ways. One, it makes the school year a little bit less stressful for learners, more flexible for families, and then 2, there's less learning loss during the summer because there's a shorter distance between the summer breaks. And I just dropped the calendar in the chat. And so that's and the reason we break up into 7 is because we do 7 quests over the course of a year, 7 projects. And we put a lot of public value into those projects. We spend a lot of time designing those projects. We conclude those projects with what's called an exhibition, where all the parents hop on a Zoom, the experts, the users, the learners hop on a Zoom, and the learners demonstrate mastery. They present their product, they present their recommendations, they get feedback, they speak publicly. And it's not dissimilar from how we work in the marketplace. We'll be working on a team on a project for a month or so, and we'll go hard, and then we'll celebrate it, present it, move on, take a little break, and then do it again. That's kind of how we think about school. So that's the schedule.
Thank
Melissa?
you.
I think actually Ivy's had her hand up longer. You want to go ahead, Ivy?
No worries. Thank you, dear heart. So I guess my question is, because we're talking about pulling in additional coursework, what is the core coursework that you all provide are the quests and kind of the framework around developing an approach? And is there a core curriculum that then the parents provide? Because I'm hearing us mentioning about math classes and science classes, or the school sets a foundation, whether it's Khan Academy or whatever other resource, with core curriculum, and then the additional quests and the internships and all of that co-ops that's developed in cooperation with the parent and student, as well as their guide.
Yeah. The way to think about it is at the beginning of the year, we provide for each learner and family the badge plan. And on that badge plan, you'll see traditional academics, in middle school, reading, writing, math, history, so in the form of civilization. Story arts is English. Quest is project-based learning. There's quests have science and math integrated into them as well. And then you'll see some math courses. You'll see apprenticeships. You'll see a servant leader badge, which is where they get practice at, leading as a servant and serving others. Community service, public service, mentoring. And then in high school, it's traditional academics plus, the other things that I mentioned. There's a learner design course that they are invited to design for themselves. They have to do 2 of those before they graduate. But the bottom line is, Ivy, like you're given the badge plan at the beginning of the year, and it includes, the whole program, and you look at that and decide, what do you want to add, subtract, or change? Some families say this is exactly what we want because embedded in that program is a lot of student choice. They can design their own badges, they can design their own courses, and that counts, and they're invited to do so. And for some, that's enough. For others, it's not enough. Other parents and caregivers and learners come in and they're like, ooh, we want to change these 7 things and replace them with these things. Or we want to add these 5 things and take out these 2 things, and then we'll just have that conversation. But that's kind of how the process works. Christy, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a pretty good summary of it. I would say kind of if you're thinking in lines of high school, we have the 3 that we do live every week, which is the quest, the story arts, and the civilization. So those are the live collaborative interactions. The things that the learners are doing more independently. It's still with us, they're still checking in with us, we're discussing it. But that tends to be the math course. They need 3 science credits. We give them the lab credits through our quests, our science quests each year, but they're doing 3 science courses and a US history course. And then any electives that they want to add that just help them get where they want to go. So they're doing those independently. They're setting their goals for how they move through those courses and checking in with the guide each week on them. But we're still involved in the process. So you and the learner might pick the course like, hey, this year we want to do this science course and we're going to do it on this platform or this dual enrollment. And we say, okay, great. And then the guide works with the learner throughout the year just to make sure they're on track with their goal for completion, helping them through any tricky parts, offering, encouragement to keep going. So it's part independent, but part also in collaboration with their studio and the guide.
Melissa?
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions. So I think I have a pretty unique 14-year-old. So my 14-year-old knows that he wants to be a college professor, wants to study linguistics and cultural anthropology, and really loves his current study of Japanese and wants to, study more about ancient cultures of Asia. However, my kiddo has had a lot of difficulty in classroom settings and in having to work with peers, especially on group projects. And um, I, as a parent, would love to see that piece come into place. But I wonder if it is possible, starting out, to really do much more individual work and less group work, or how I'm hearing a lot that this group project piece is very much at the heart of this school. And to me, that sounds wonderful. I'm pretty social and I love hearing all of the input from my peers. To him, that would not be the place he would want to start in a new school. And so I'm wondering if that can be, not necessarily that that's going to be the way it always is. And but is that something that can be accommodated as a starting point? That's one question. And then my second question, I hate to have to ask, but I feel like I do in the current political climate. How is the school allowing kids to use their pronouns that do not match their gender assigned at birth, their sex assigned at birth? And how do you deal with that on transcripts? And how do you deal with that in the classroom? And are learners who are genderqueer welcome in this community?
Great question, Melissa. I'll start with both these, and Christy, feel free to weigh in. So for the first one, which was about group work, I mean, I would say our guides on the whole are very responsive to learners, onboarding learners into our environment. and doing things to set them up for success. Just I would say that they have that heart and that expertise and that interest. I think the way that Quest is really where the group work happens the most. And the way that quests are designed, Melissa, is every learner for a quest is given, we call them deliverables. Basically, it's a mixture of assignments for that quest, some of which are individual that they're doing on their own, and some of which are group. The nice thing is none of them are graded because we don't have grades. It's mastery based. And so when it comes to a group deliverable, the group works together to build that thing and turn it in, for the quest. And inevitably what happens, as does group work in the real world, is there are learners who participate and carry the load of the work more than others, and there are learners who don't. And we know that. And it happens, and we think people learn from that. We think the young people learn from that on both sides. The learners who carry that group work learn what it's like to work with those who don't, and the learners who don't learn what it's like to learn what the impact is like, on those who do carry the work. And we think that's valuable. And we want learners to experience that. But the way we solve for that in terms of badge credit is making sure that each quest has an individual deliverable. So every learner is going to be working on their own thing and they're turning that thing in. And they can only get credit for the badge when they turn in that individual work. And they also, turn in somehow that they participate in some way with the group work, even if it's not the most ideal collaboration, And what they'll get is they'll get a 360 feedback score because we use 360 feedback regularly. And they'll get that feedback, and they'll learn from that feedback over time. And sometimes it takes learners a long time to learn from that 360 feedback, and sometimes it takes, learners to not. I've had one learner on the autistic spectrum in our past who, did not respond well to feedback from groups. We with the parents, we played it out. We said, all right, well, we all agreed, kind of like you were saying, Melissa, like, ideally this would happen, right? Ideally they would be able to collaborate well. And we just said, well, let's see. And so for a year and a half, really, we just tried it out until this learner got to the place where it was really, we all kind of determined it was not within her capacity or goal for herself to collaborate in that way. And then we made the decision at that time. The family made the decision, like, yeah, we're going to go somewhere else. And it made sense to me, in that moment that they would do that. But we definitely tried, and I think the system structure is built in such a way that learners can quote unquote fail in that sense, in a low stakes, safe, supportive environment. They're going to get the feedback. They're going to be invited to collaborate. They're going to have an opportunity to turn in their own individual work. Yeah, that's kind of what we do. Chrissy, does that sound about right?
Yeah, definitely. The online space can be tricky in that aspect sometimes. But what our guides try to do for learners who are in that category is a couple of things. They might, at the beginning, ask them to kind of identify one or two other learners in the studio who feel safe to them or that they feel connected to in some way. And maybe they are paired with them for a while for any group work. Another thing is just the guides will provide frameworks. So, hey, in this breakout room, when you're collaborating on this particular challenge, here are the roles that you can have. And those roles can be decided on amongst the group. And so I know yesterday one of our guides said, all right, who would like to be the speaker? Who would like to be the designer of the presentation? And who would like to be the timekeeper? So a lot of the learners who tend to be a little bit more introverted, they might offer to be the timekeeper. It's less public interaction, less speaking. And so that way they're able to still fulfill a role in the group, but doing so in a way that suits them better. So part of that is just, I think, the guides getting to know the learners and helping them kind of navigate those situations as well.
And to your second question, Melissa, I think this is a really important one. You notice, you may remember the fourth pillar that I mentioned in our school, learning to live together. One of the qualities of our school is we are intentionally diverse by design. We're definitely inclusive of we're trying to maximize multiple dimensions of diversity. And what they are, the dimensions of diversity we're trying to maximize at the school are race, gender, age, economic status, religion, um, school background, and learning differences. And then, of course, with For School Online, geography. And we are literally trying to maximize each one of those dimensions of diversity at our school and bring together families from across lines of difference and help them love and support one another in 2025. And you can imagine with that goal how diverse our parent and caregiver and learner population is. We have folks all across the ideological spectrum, all across. And then we're at the For School Online, we're international. So we have folks who, specifically as it relates to pronouns and gender issues, as discussed in the United States right now, we have learners who, coming from Kenya and Uganda and China, who, it is a learning moment for them to even appreciate what the conversation is being had in the United States, similar as it is for our United States learners to appreciate what are the cultural issues and debates and values that are being, shared in those respective countries. And we love that, honestly. And if we disagree, or not if, when we disagree, the invitation is, okay, clearly we have different viewpoints on this. How are we going to live together? That's the spirit. It really is. It's learning to live together. And it's about honoring one another's culture, honoring one another's perspective, understanding one another's perspective and values, respecting that. One of the standards I have at school is 100% of people, alive or dead, present or not, are going to be respected at the For School Online. And when it comes specifically to pronouns, yes, folks are using pronouns that they choose. And what we will do is we reach out to the parents and we say, hey, this is what your learner is requesting. Just want to make sure you're both aware and on board of, because we don't want to get in the way of, and then we want to understand that, and then go from there. So it's really that empathy posture. Okay, say more about what you're valuing and what you're wanting and what your request is, and let's see if we can meet this, and then let's help others to understand what it is, and then respect all people, and then figure out how to live together, even if we disagree. One of some of the launches that I did recently at the For School Online, I talked about this principle from psychology called around self-differentiation. I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's from family systems theory. And it's basically this principle of how do we stay true as individuals to our identity, to our value, to our purpose, and stay connected to others even when we disagree, and even remain open to other perspectives, by the folks that we interact with. But again, stay true to who we are and stay connected, it is one of the values that we have at the school. Chrissy, anything you'd add about that?
Yeah, no, I think that perfectly captured it. I guess just to add, currently we have several learners who use alternative pronouns, and the learners are quite used to it. We have had since the beginning, and I can't really think of any cases where anyone has been outright disrespectful to a learner in that situation. Our learners are really great. They learn how to respect each other, how to have empathy, and they're a very welcoming bunch.
And the other thing I'll say before maybe Rachel, your final question is, I care a lot about, Chrissy does too, the parents and caregivers too, and how can we grow as adults and develop as, caring mentors of these young children. We're trying to rear beautiful humans, and so we have monthly parent coffees that I lead, that Chrissy leads, and the spirit of it is to share ideas willingly, SIW and SIS, steal ideas shamelessly from one another about how we parent, about how we take care of our kids. And so that's something we put a lot of value on, and we have great topics that we cover as how we can grow as adults and really care for our kids. Rachel, I think you've been patiently waiting and given others a space. What was your question that was in your mind?
No, these are all great questions. And I love to hear other people's questions because it does spark ideas. But my question is just, what does an average school day look like? Because I see where you have kind of the independent study at the beginning of the day and then check-ins. So is it something they're on the computer all day, or is it something that they know they have their badges they're earning and they do the work independently and then do their check-ins at those 3 times a day? Kind of just what does it look like for the students?
You bet. Chrissy, you want to walk through this?
Sure. So of course we have learners all over the world. So some learners are joining really early in the morning for them, straight away at 10:30 Eastern. That might be their wake up time. Others might live in a time zone where they have a couple hours before that first opening launch to kind of get some work done. The independent flex times, those are really used by learners for those independent badges that we don't do together online, like reading their deep books, working through their e-learning platforms for math or science, or what course they might be doing, um, going out to meet their mentor for their apprenticeship to log those hours, doing their community service. And they set their goals for those for the week and then each day. So they decide, today I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do math before opening launch. I'm going to be in synchronous time till 1:15. And then after that, I'm going to spend an hour on my deep book and then I'm going to go meet my mentor for an hour. So a lot of times with the parents' help, they kind of establish goals for their schedule each day for those more independent badges that they're working on. The synchronous time really focuses, like the opening launch really focuses on learn to live together, but also all the different mastery credits that they're earning on their transcript. So we'll have launches on growth mindset or cross-cultural awareness, or flourishing, what it means to flourish. So they'll get to explore those mastery credits during that time. Sometimes that time is used for a circle, which is where they check in emotionally, how they're feeling. What are they overwhelmed by this week? What could they use support in? The running partner check-ins, that's kind of those accountability pieces. That's where they set the goals and share them. And then the signature learning experience, that's where they do the quest challenges, story arts challenges, the civ challenges. They work together, the experts come in, their exhibitions at the end of the session. So really then the afternoon is again for them to decide, hey, what do I need to get done today? And what does that look like for me this week and each day? I hope that answered your question. If you have a follow-up, let me know.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to imagine it in my mind because I work, as well as homeschool. So it was
Okay.
trying to figure out how that plays into it. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Maybe I have time for one more. Chrissy, any final thoughts for this group?
I don't know what you guys covered when we were in the breakout room.
A
So
lot.
not
We covered a lot.
necessarily.
How
Yeah,
did it go in the
but
breakout room?
it went great. I just wanted to shout out all 3 of the learners we had in there. They were all fantastic, and they all seemed like they would be great in our studios and would really fit in and do well there.
Fun. And if y'all didn't have a chance to bring your learner to this one, but would like to the next one, feel free to do so. Milo, actually, his parents came to our last open house and then chose to bring Milo today after they had gotten to know it. So we're welcome to do that. Y'all, I encourage you, we do rolling admissions at Forest School Online. We have a few spots left for this year. If you're interested in the rest of this year, we've got about 40% of the school year left and a lot of great quests planned for the last 2 sessions of the year. If you're interested, let Chrissy know. Rachel, I see your message there. You'd like a recording of this for sure. We'll send that out to you. Chrissy, if you'll just remind me, we can have Lyric put that on YouTube and send it out. And then so with rolling admissions, basically the process is to apply online. If extended, an invitation for a collaborative interview, that would be with me or Chrissy. And then invitations following that interview, invitations to enroll are extended. If there's a request to explore financial aid, at that point, families kind of raise their hand and say, I'd like to explore financial aid. And we have a process that we walk through folks to do that and then arrive at a financial aid award if relevant, and then go from there. And the reason I say it's rolling admissions is we are a small but mighty admissions team, and we're excited to wrap things up as soon as possible in the admissions season. So if it's something you're interested in, I encourage you to pose all the questions you have. Let us know. And typically the collaborative interview, final questions really get answered quite a bit there. So would commend that to you. Thank you all so much for being on this call tonight or this morning, depending on where you are. And it's great to see such a geographically diverse group of folks here for somewhat similar reasons, just in terms of empowering our young people to, take hold of their future, grow agency, have a truly customized learning plan. And it's great to be in touch.
Thanks so
Ivy, in
much.
terms of the goal of enrolled students, our studios are not going to get bigger right now than 35, and they're smaller than that at the moment. The numbers right now, Chrissy, are per studio. How many?
40, we have 45 total. Most of the studios are between 12 to 16 currently. That fluctuates throughout the year as more join.
Yeah, great. So again, thank you all so much. Enjoy the evening or morning, and great to meet you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great evening, everyone.